Hi, everybody. This is Drew Tom with the Association for Middle Level Education, and I'm joined by two wonderful people here today on this Google Hangout. I've got Jason DeHart, and he's a former language arts teacher. He is currently working on his PhD in literacy studies at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and he also teaches graduate courses at Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee. And also we have Christie DeHart, and she is an English language arts teacher at Ocoee Middle School in Cleveland, Tennessee, and she is also the recipient of the Cliff Schimmel's Excellent Performance Awards in Teaching and Learning. So that's awesome. And clearly, because you're checking out this article, they're also the wonderful authors of this article that you're checking out in AMLE magazine entitled Removing Imaginary Boundaries Around Content. So exploring the whole concept of integrated curriculum. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome, awesome. So start off right with the key question, starting with the young adolescents in mind. Why do young adolescents learn more and more effectively when teachers take an interdisciplinary approach? Why is it so important?
I think, many times we move from room to room, and students move from room to room throughout the day to a lot of different classes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they see those walls as really boundaries and separations between content. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I think, Dr. Richard Allington talks about modeling for students and showing students those connections between the areas of the core that they go to can really help them see the connections between those subject areas. And it even draws on their strengths. A student may feel like they have a strength in one content area, and they may be completely removed from the other content area. But then showing the connections can help them establish, okay, I'm not bad at this subject. There are areas here that I can connect to and connect to my own interests and my own abilities.
Got it. But by keeping them, if we keep them separated, then clearly that doesn't help that type of efficacy that a student may feel. But by combining them, it may help that out. That's really important. So how do we encourage teachers who are kind of on the fence about interdisciplinary teaching? What do we say to them, and how do we get them on board? Because for some, it's still a barrier. What do we say?
Well, when I started using interdisciplinary curriculum in my own classroom, I started with areas that I was comfortable with and that I was passionate about, so that my students would pick up on that passion and that excitement in our learning. So, for instance, I love history. I'm an English teacher, but I love history. So I found it really easy to make those connections between history and language arts. So I would encourage teachers to find something in their curriculum, in their teaming curriculum, whether it be social studies, science, math, even health, PE, to make those connections, and then they can start building units of study around their interests and things that are related to our standards. And then they can branch out from there after they develop more comfort.
Right, but starting with that's such good advice. And what would you say if someone's like, you know what, I just don't have time to fit it in, and it's my curriculum pacing guide. I've got to be like at this point, like during the year. Like how do you come back at that and say, no, you do have time?
Well, you can start out small, even if it were just one portion of one class. Maybe integrate an article that's related to social studies or science. And that way, just start out very small, because we're reading text in language arts class every day. And by the same notion, in science and social studies, we're writing every day. So if we can pull in those writing strategies into social studies class or science class, then that's going to help students to become better, more detailed writers. And
right.
If we're putting in science and social studies articles, even just to start reading those texts that are related, then students are going to see those connections. So you can start out really small, and then you can develop more complex ideas.
Right. No, that makes sense. Thank you. Thanks for answering that. So, and not only was that idea that you just shared a good one too, but clearly the ones in the article are tremendous and are really, really engaging. So I'm going to mention the dreaded A word, and I mean that in a clean way too. Assessment. How do you assess student learning with these interdisciplinary lessons to ensure that standards are being met? You're doing all these creative things to connect content areas, but then how do you make sure that the standards are, like I said, being met by kids?
The place that I would really emphasize there is formative assessment. I know we're really focused on summative assessment in the world of education, but building those steps along the way and giving students a variety of ways to meet standards, I think can help them in the process. So I don't think there's enough that can be said for formative assessment and the kind of even informal observations that teachers can make about students as they're working on projects and as they're working among their team. And Christie has some really specific ideas there with formative assessments, but
awesome.
One thing that I would also mention would be having just a clear, simple rubric. I can reflect on many times working on cross-disciplinary projects, and most of the time felt like it was spent just developing this complex rubric. So I would really advocate for something simple that it identifies those areas that are measurable, and then working with a team to decide which areas of that rubric really fit what you want to measure.
Makes lots of sense. Yeah. Using rubrics. And rubrics have been around for a long time, but we often forget how instrumental they can be with giving a consistent framework to students on how they're going to be assessed going forward on something like an interdisciplinary lesson or a project or unit or whatever. So that's a good point. So we talked about students and stakeholders. We obviously talked about how teachers are impacted and instrumental in this work. How about school leaders? Are there anything what can school leaders do, school administrators in particular, what can they do to encourage and foster this kind of interdisciplinary work?
I think, I don't know, I can't speak for the broad learning community, but I see, as we've developed this idea of professional learning communities, I see us growing as educators and connecting with our own content areas. So I think to encourage administrators to encourage teachers to have cross-curricular PLCs to share what they're doing in their own classrooms, so that we can start to explore how can we make these connections. For instance, last year in an observation that I had, I was teaching a summarization strategy, and my principal noticed that the summarization strategy that I was using in my classroom was something that a history teacher on another team was using. So, and that's a natural connection between language, arts, and history. So if we start to share the things that we're doing in our classrooms, then I think we would see that we're already doing a lot of similar things that we can build upon.
Right. And most people, like you say, with PLCs, most schools that I've been at and worked with, PLCs are departmentalized. But you're advocating for something that, it should happen, those interdisciplinary PLCs, so people have a chance to share what's going great and what strategies are really working across the content areas. Very, very valuable. So clearly, both of you, well, individually and clearly collectively, you are gifted. You are advanced. I mean, I'm just saying that right now. I don't say that to everybody, but I can tell. So you're clearly able to handle the next metaphorical question, right? Are you guys ready for it?
Yes.
I know. Okay, here we go. So if interdisciplinary learning was a food for middle level education, what kind of food would it be and why? What do you got?
That is an interesting question. The first thing that I thought of was a buffet.
Okay.
Lots of options, lots of choices. There are more than one ways to build a plate that winds up being a good plate at the end of the meal. And the other thing that's maybe, it's a little practical, but you would want a really good sneeze screen over that buffet, I think, especially with cold and flu season and all those sort of things.
No, that makes a lot of sense, especially during cold and flu season. No, that's a good point. So is that the answer for both of you? I didn't want to, Christy, I don't know if you had your own.
No, I had my own.
Okay, go ahead.
Thinking about what middle schoolers like. And I started with avocados, and I thought, no, pizza. Interdisciplinary learning is like pizza because you can dress it up in so many different ways. I mean, you can have a dessert pizza, you can have a veggie pizza, you can have a meat pizza. So interdisciplinary learning is taking all of those different types of food, or those different areas of our curriculum and our content, and meshing them together. So you have like a Hawaiian pizza, or you have your fruit and you have your meats.
Absolutely. So many different options. So what I think is so apt about your metaphor, I'm going to combine the two, because I could, so with Jason, with your with the buffet, when you mentioned the sneeze guard, I know that was but that was funny, but I think that brings up a good point, that like with interdisciplinary learning, you have to have structure, you have to have a framework and some safety around it. You want kids to be able to take risks, clearly, and teachers do too, but people can tend to be more courageous when they feel like there's a support or a framework to guide them, right?
Absolutely.
And then with pizza, I totally agree with that. But if I were to be if I were to combine the pizza and the buffet, I've been to some pizza buffets where there might be quantity of pizza, but it's not quality of pizza, right? So I guess being careful that like we want to make sure that the interdisciplinary learning is a quality offering, and not just let's throw everything out there and lots of options just for option's sake. I don't know. Maybe I'm barking up the wrong buffet tree there. I don't know.
I think that fits.
I agree.
It's all right. We work together on that one. All right. Awesome. Well, clearly, I feel like we've removed some boundaries today. I appreciate that, making us all very obviously making us better learners and more knowledgeable about interdisciplinary learning and integrated curriculum and the benefits for students and for teachers too. So thank you for not only the article, but thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, both Jason and Christie. Awesome. Well done, and enjoy the rest of your day. And everybody out there, thank you for checking out the article and this interview here at AMLE. We help you reach every student, grow professionally, and create great schools. Thanks again.